while claiming to be a grassroots organization formed in response to the prevalence of police violence. Black Lives Matter, BLM, is actually 100% pure astroturf. With coffers bulging with millions of dollars from George Soros, the Ford Foundation, and other deep-pocketed leftist individuals and groups, BLM is little more than a front organization for these leftists and their agenda to reshape the very fabric of American society, culture, and law. As The New American recently reported, Ken Zimmerman, the director of U.S. programs at Soros's Open Society Foundations, OSF, denied last year that Soros had funded BLM, saying it was just a rumor. That was before hackers with DCLeaks.com published OSF documents showing that the Soros Group had already given at least $650,000 directly to BLM. Those same documents reveal the reason for OSF bankrolling BLM, the dismantling of America so that it can be recast according to the vision of Soros and his leftist cohorts. As we reported then, the relevant portion of the report says, the killing of Freddie Gray in April helped spawn weeks of peaceful protests by Baltimore residents and allies from the Black Lives Matter movement that were temporarily interrupted by a period of unrest that lasted less than 48 hours and resulted in some injuries and millions of dollars in property damage to neighborhood businesses. While many lamented the damage done, the overwhelming sentiment is that the uprising has catalyzed a paradigm shift in Baltimore that offers opportunities for major justice reforms. In particular, recent events offer a unique opportunity to accelerate the dismantling of structural inequality generated and maintained by local law enforcement and to engage residents who have historically been disenfranchised in Baltimore City in shaping and monitoring reform. Building on our existing networks and programs, OSA Baltimore will focus investments on 1. Creating a culture of accountability for policing in Baltimore, recognizing the pervasive racism, disrespect and lawlessness that gave rise to recent events, and 2. Building the capacity of activists in Baltimore to demand and achieve immediate and long-term reforms. The sum of $650,000 is quite something for an organization claiming both that it is grassroots and that it represents the people being oppressed by an evil, racist society. Grassroots aren't normally that wealthy, and evil, racist societies don't normally fund organizations dedicated to throwing off those chains. There is clearly something else at work here, and that something is an AstroTurf front for racial agitation. And, as much money as $650,000 is, it is mere drop in the bucket. The Washington Times reports that between OSF and the Center for American Progress, BLM has been the beneficiary of $33 million. Through grants to a variety of subversive organizations under the BLM umbrella, OSF and the Center for American Progress are funding a false narrative about racial disparity and police violence with the end goal of reforming local police by federalizing them. By using the looting and rioting as opportunities for major justice reforms, Soros and his ilk have fanned the flames of an invented fire for their own purposes. As bad as all of that would be on its own, even that $33 million is, yet and still, just a drop in the bucket. The Ford Foundation and Borealis Philanthropy have recently formed the Black-led Movement Fund with a 6-year commitment to a pooled donor campaign to the tune of $100 million. Race hustling, it would appear, is a booming industry. After all, you can't make omelets without breaking a few eggs, and you can't reconstruct a society until you first tear it down. And there is no tool better at tearing down a society than the proven method of divide and conquer. $133 million will pay for a lot of #BLM #FTP t-shirts. So, under the banner and hashtag of Black Lives Matter sits a bulging and growing money bag. What is BLM doing with its ill-gotten gains? Have these leaders of Black America started career training centers in the most impoverished and disenfranchised neighborhoods? No, they have simply demanded higher minimum wages. Rather than help the poor, Black residents of the nation's poor, Black neighborhoods learn more valuable job skills. BLM simply demands that entry-level McJobs pay more than the jobs are worth. Have these leaders of Black America started drug rehabilitation programs to help the poor overcome addictions? No, they have instead demanded that the legalization of drugs which addle the minds of the poor, Black Americans in the inner cities of America. Have these leaders of Black America launched programs to address the cycle of poverty which necessarily accompanies high legitimate birth rates and fatherless homes? No. Instead they have demanded that the sex work industry, a not-so-veiled reference to prostitution, be legalized. If Black lives mattered to these leaders in the BLM movement, they would seek ways to make Black lives better. Instead they use Black lives as cannon fodder in their war on police, which is part of a larger war on society. Take for instance just one of the many subversive organizations which will receive that $100 million from the Ford Foundation and Borealis Philanthropy. The Movement for Black Lives, MBL, advocates for all of the above-mentioned ideas and more. MBL demands reparations including free college and a minimum wage with no requirements for the one receiving the wage to perform any work in order to receive it. It's enough to make one wonder what the free college education is for if people will get money for nothing. MBL also demands the legalization, they prefer the term decriminalization, of drugs and prostitution. Their demand goes so far as to make such policy retroactive and to include, say it with me, reparations. And, with a wink and a nod to Marx and Engels, MBL demands economic justice to include collective ownership, not merely access. The communist on its face nature of these and other demands of the organizations under the BLM umbrella are a clear indicator of the real intent of BLM. The deep-pocketed funding by the likes of Soros, the Center for American Progress, the Ford Foundation, and Borealis Philanthropy show that BLM is the means, not the end. BLM is little more than a tool of social revolutionaries hell-bent on destroying America so they can build their long-awaited dystopia which they attempt to pass off as a